The massive alien warship hung in space like a dark metal mountain. Its hull stretched for over a kilometer, covered in weapon ports that could destroy entire cities. Emperor Vexthol stood on the bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back as he stared at the small blue planet on the main screen. "Such a tiny world," he said to his officers. "How can these humans think they can resist the galactic hegemony?" War Marshal Krextar stepped forward. He was even larger than the Emperor, his thick armor making him look like a walking tank. "My Lord, our scouts confirm what we already knew. Earth has only 12 small warships. Their weapons are primitive. They use simple metal projectiles instead of plasma cannons." The Emperor laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Metal projectiles? How amusing. Do they think they can hurt our shields with such toys?" On Earth, Captain Li Dongwu stood in the command center deep beneath Seoul. The room buzzed with activity as dozens of officers worked at their stations. Li was 45 years old with gray streaks in his black hair and scars on his hands from the border wars 20 years ago. He had fought aliens before, smaller groups that tried to raid human colonies, but nothing like this. "Sir," the alien, "fleet has 800 ships," reported Lieutenant Park. "They're holding position at the edge of our solar system." Li nodded grimly. The galactic hegemony controlled half the known galaxy. They had conquered thousands of worlds. Most planets surrendered without a fight when the hegemony fleet arrived. Those that resisted were bombed from orbit until nothing remained but ash and rubble. "Any word from Admiral Park?" Li asked. "She's still in the deep facility, sir. Project Rising Sun is on schedule." Li allowed himself a small smile. The aliens thought they knew everything about Earth's defenses. They had been watching human space for 50 years, counting ships and weapons. But they had no idea what humanity had been building in secret. The communication system crackled to life. Emperor Vexthol's image appeared on the main screen, his reptilian face twisted in what might have been a smile. "People of Earth," the Emperor began, his voice translated by computer. "I am Emperor Vexthol of the Galactic Hegemony. Your small world has caught our attention. We have need of your planet's resources and your people's labor." Li felt his jaw tighten. The hegemony was known for turning conquered populations into slaves. "You have 72 hours to surrender completely," the Emperor continued. "Lower your shields, disable your weapons, and prepare for occupation. If you comply, we will be merciful. Your people will serve the hegemony, but they will live." The alien leader paused, his yellow eyes gleaming. "If you resist, we will demonstrate why no species has ever successfully opposed the hegemony. Your cities will burn, your oceans will boil. Nothing will remain of your civilization except stories told by other species as warnings." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. "Sir?" Lieutenant Park asked quietly. "Send a reply," Li said. "Tell them we need time to consider their offer. Buy us 48 hours. As the lieutenant worked, Li walked to the elevator that would take him down to the deepest levels of the facility. Few people knew what lay 5 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean. Even fewer knew that the project had taken 50 years to complete. The elevator descended for 10 minutes before the doors opened. Li stepped into a corridor that stretched, beyond sight in both directions. The walls were made of a metal so advanced that most alien species couldn't even detect it. Emergency lights cast long shadows as Li walked toward the central command chamber. Admiral Park Hae-jin was waiting for him. She was 52 years old, with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had been in charge of Project Rising since its beginning. "How much longer?" Li asked. 18 hours for final systems check," Admiral Park replied. "The Indomitable is ready for launch." Li nodded. The UES Indomitable was humanity's greatest secret. While the aliens watched Earth's surface, humans had been building something incredible in the ocean depths. The construction facility was larger than most cities, hidden beneath layers of rock and metal that blocked all scanning attempts. "The crew?" Li asked. 50,000 of our best people. They've been training in secret for years. Many of them don't even know what ship they'll be serving on until they board." They walked together through the facility. Through massive windows, Li could see the Indomitable taking shape. The ship was 12 kilometers long. larger than any vessel ever built by humans or aliens. Its hull was covered in armor made from materials that didn't exist in nature. Human scientists had spent decades learning how to create metal that could absorb energy weapons and redirect the power to the ship's own systems. Dr. Kim's latest report? Admiral Park asked. All weapon systems tested and ready. The railguns can accelerate projectiles to 15% of light speed. The fighter bays are loaded with 2,000 of our newest interceptors. Lee studied the ship through the window. It looked nothing like alien vessels, which were covered in smooth curves and glowing energy conduits. The Indomitable was angular, aggressive, built for one purpose: war. The aliens think we're primitive, Admiral Park said. They see our metal projectiles and chemical explosives and assume we're centuries behind them. What they don't understand is that we chose this path deliberately, Lee replied. While they focused on exotic energy and anti-gravity, we perfected materials science and kinetic warfare. Dr. Kim Tae-hyun joined them at the observation window. He was 38 years old, thin and intense, with the look of someone who hadn't slept in weeks. As chief engineer of the Supercarrier project, he had designed weapons that could challenge the galaxy's most advanced warships. The hegemony uses energy shields and plasma weapons, Dr. Kim explained. Their entire military doctrine is based on energy versus energy. But our weapons don't use energy at all. A chunk of ultra-dense metal moving at high speed will go right through their shields like they don't exist. And if they try to use energy weapons against us? Lee asked. Dr. Kim smiled for the first time in months. Our hull armor absorbs energy and feeds it to our power systems. The harder they shoot at us, the stronger we become. Lieutenant Commander Choi Mi-young approached the group. She was 29 years old, one of the youngest officers ever to reach her rank. She would be commanding the Indomitable's fighter squadrons during the coming battle. Sir, the pilots are ready, she reported to Admiral Park. We've run every simulation possible. The new fighters are faster and more maneuverable than anything in the hegemony fleet. How can you be certain? Lee asked. We've been studying their tactics for decades, Choi replied. Every time they conquered a world, we analyzed their battle recordings. Alien pilots are skilled, but they think in straight lines. They don't expect the kind of three-dimensional combat our pilots train for. Admiral Park checked her watch. 16 hours until the ultimatum expires. Are we really going to do this? Lee looked at each of them in turn. These were the people Earth was trusting with its future. In a few hours, they would either save humanity or watch it burn. The hegemony has enslaved hundreds of species. Lee said quietly. They think might makes right. They believe smaller civilizations exist only to serve larger ones. It's time someone showed them they're wrong. Dr. Kim nodded. Every system is ready. The Indomitable is the most advanced warship ever built. But it's still just one ship against 800. One ship with the right weapons and the right crew. Admiral Park corrected. Quality over quantity. As they spoke, alerts began sounding throughout the facility. The hegemony fleet was moving, positioning itself for the final assault on Earth. Their massive dreadnoughts formed a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. War Marshal Krextar stood on his flagship bridge, watching the tactical display. The humans sent a message asking for more time to consider surrender. What do you think, my lord? Emperor Vex Thul waved a dismissive hand. Let them beg for a few more hours. It changes nothing. When the time expires, we will show the galaxy what happens to species that make the hegemony wait. Back on Earth, the final preparations were beginning. The Indomitable's massive engines were warming up, systems that used controlled fusion reactions to generate more power than most planets consumed. The ship's crew was boarding through hidden tunnels that connected to military bases around the world. Commander Yoon Seok-jin led his fighter squadron through the boarding process. He was 34 years old, with over 200 combat missions in smaller conflicts. His pilots looked nervous but determined as they made their way to the fighter bays. Remember your training, Yoon told them. The aliens have never faced human tactics before. Use that advantage. Stay mobile, work as teams, and trust your instincts. Chief Petty Officer Han Sora was running final checks on the weapon systems. She was 31 years old, an expert in the new railgun technology that would be humanity's main advantage in the coming battle. The weapons were massive, built into the ship's structure itself, capable of firing projectiles across vast distances with perfect accuracy. "All batteries report ready," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We have enough ammunition for extended combat." Major Bae Kyung-ho was preparing his Marines for the possibility of boarding actions. He was 40 years old. The UES Indomitable moved through space like a predator stalking its prey. Admiral Park stood on the bridge, watching as her ship closed the distance to the hegemony fleet. The alien vessels were spread across millions of kilometers, their formations designed to overwhelm any enemy through sheer numbers. "Distance to enemy fleet?" Admiral Park asked. 2 million kilometers in closing, reported Lieutenant Commander Choi Mi-young from the tactical station. Their lead ships are beginning to move into attack position. On the hegemony flagship, War Marshal Krextar studied the approaching human vessel with growing unease. The ship was unlike anything in his databases. Where hegemony vessels were, smooth and curved, following aesthetic principles developed over thousands of years, the human ship was angular and aggressive. It looked like it had been built for one purpose only. "War. Analysis complete, sir," reported his chief science officer. "The vessel appears to be constructed from unknown materials. Our sensors cannot penetrate its hull to determine internal structure or capabilities." Krextar frowned. In his 300 years of military service, he had never encountered a species whose technology could block hegemony sensors. "Weapon systems? Unknown, sir. We detect no energy signatures consistent with plasma cannons or particle beams. There are multiple structures along the hull that could be weapon ports, but they emit no detectable energy." "Communications officer," Krextar ordered, "send a final demand for surrender. Make it clear that this is their last chance." The transmission reached the Indomitable within seconds. Emperor Vexthul's image appeared on the human ship's main screen, his reptilian features twisted in anger. "Human vessel, you will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Your resistance is pointless. We have 800 ships to. You're one. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." Admiral Park looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These men and women had trained their entire lives for this moment. They knew they were outnumbered, but they also knew something the aliens didn't. Humanity had spent 50 years preparing for exactly this scenario. "Dr. Kim," Admiral Park said quietly, "are all systems ready?" Dr. Kim Tae-hyun checked his displays one final time. The ship's weapons were charged, its armor was fully powered, and its fighters were ready for launch. "All systems green, Admiral. The Indomitable is ready for combat." Admiral Park turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to the enemy fleet." The bridge fell silent as the communication system activated. When Admiral Park spoke, her voice was calm and steady, carrying the authority of someone who had never backed down from a fight. "This is Admiral Park Hye-jin of the United Earth ship Indomitable. We have given you the opportunity to withdraw from our system peacefully. Since you have chosen aggression over diplomacy, we will now demonstrate why that was a mistake." War Marshal. Krextar laughed, the sound echoing through his bridge. "Demonstrate? What can one ship possibly demonstrate against the might of the hegemony?" His answer came seconds later when the Indomitable's fighter bays opened. Commander Yoon Seok-jin led the first wave of fighters out of the massive ship. His squadron of 50 fighters was followed by another, then another, until the space around. The Indomitable was filled with small, fast-moving craft. The fighters were sleek and angular, built for speed and maneuverability rather than the heavy armor favored by alien designs. "All squadrons, this is Flight Leader Yoon," he announced over the communication system. "Remember your training. Stay in formation. Watch your wingmates and show these aliens how humans fight." On the hegemony flagship, the sensor operator was staring at his screen in disbelief. "Sir, the human vessel is launching fighters. Current count is 500, 1,000. Still launching, sir." Krextar moved to look at the display himself. The number of human fighters continued to climb. 1,500, 1,800, 2,000. Finally, the launch bays closed, but the space around the human ship now contained more fighters than most hegemony battle groups. How is this possible? Krextar demanded. No ship can carry that many fighters. Where are they storing them? His science officer was frantically checking the readings. Sir, the human vessel appears to be larger than our initial estimates, much larger. It's possible the ship is primarily a fighter carrier with minimal other systems. Then it should be helpless against our capital ships, Krextar said. Launch our own fighters and prepare the fleet for attack. The hegemony fleet began to move. 800 warships spread across space, their formation designed to bring maximum firepower to bear on any enemy. Each ship was armed with plasma, cannons capable of melting through any known armor, and particle beams that could slice smaller vessels in half. Chief Petty Officer Han Sora monitored the approaching enemy from her station in the Indomitable's Weapons Control Center. She was 31 years old and had spent the last 10 years learning every detail of the ship's revolutionary armament. The Indomitable carried weapons that most alien species couldn't even imagine. Target acquisition complete, Han reported, to the bridge. All railguns are charged and ready. What's our maximum effective range? Admiral Park asked. At current power levels, we can accurately engage targets up to 5 million kilometers away, Han replied. The projectiles will maintain destructive velocity even at that distance. Admiral Park smiled grimly. The hegemony fleet was still almost 2 million kilometers away, well within the Indomitable's engagement envelope. But the aliens had no way of knowing that human kinetic weapons could reach across such vast distances. Begin combat operations, Admiral Park ordered. Target their lead elements. Let's see how well their shields work against good old-fashioned physics. The Indomitable's railguns were marvels of human engineering. Each weapon used powerful magnetic fields to accelerate projectiles made of ultra-dense materials to incredible speeds. The projectiles themselves were simple chunks of metal, but they moved so fast that they carried the kinetic energy of nuclear weapons. Han selected her first target, a hegemony heavy cruiser that was leading the alien formation. The ship was 800 meters long and heavily armored, typical of the Empire's military doctrine. Its shields could deflect any energy weapon in the galactic arsenal, but they had never been tested against projectiles moving at 15% of light speed. Firing Railgun Battery 1, Han announced. The Indomitable shuddered slightly as the massive weapons fired. 4 projectiles, each weighing several tons, streaked across space faster than most sensors could track. They covered the distance to the target in less than 3 seconds. The hegemony cruiser's shields flared as they tried to deflect the incoming projectiles. Energy barriers that could stop plasma cannons and particle beams were useless against solid matter, moving at relativistic speeds. The projectiles punched through the shields like they weren't there and struck the ship's hull. The cruiser simply ceased to exist. The kinetic energy release was so enormous that the ship was vaporized instantly, leaving only an expanding cloud of superheated gas where it had been. On the hegemony flagship, alarms began screaming. War Marshal Krextar stared at his tactical display in shock as one of his heavy cruisers disappeared from the screen. "Report!" he shouted. "Sir, the cruiser Thunder of Vexthal has been destroyed," his tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. "We detected multiple projectile impacts, but our sensors couldn't track the incoming fire." "Projectiles?" Krextar couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You mean metal slugs? How can simple projectiles penetrate our shields?" Before anyone could answer, the Indomitable fired again. This time, Han targeted a battleship in the center of the alien formation. The massive hegemony vessel was over 1 kilometer long and protected by the most advanced shields in the Empire's arsenal. The railgun projectiles hit the battleship's shields and passed through them as if they didn't exist. The impacts tore massive holes in the ship's hull, venting atmosphere and debris into space. Secondary explosions rippled along the vessel's length as critical systems were destroyed. "All ships evasive maneuvers," Krextar ordered. "Do not let them target you directly." But the hegemony ships were designed for the stately, long-range combat typical of galactic warfare. They were powerful, but slow, unable to change course quickly enough to avoid the human weapons. The Indomitable continued its methodical destruction of the alien fleet. Each salvo from the railguns eliminated another enemy vessel, while the hegemony's return fire struck empty space where the human ship had been moments before. "How are they moving so fast?" demanded the hegemony navigation officer. "Their ship is 12 kilometers long. It should be too massive for rapid maneuvering." Dr. Kim would have been happy to explain the science behind human gravitic drive systems, which used controlled gravity fields to move ships without regard for their actual mass. But the aliens would have to survive the battle to learn such details. Commander, Yoon led his fighter squadrons into the heart of the hegemony formation. The alien fighters were larger and more heavily armed than their human counterparts, but they were also slower and less maneuverable. Human fighters darted between the massive capital ships like angry insects, their weapons targeting critical systems and weak points. "Blue Squadron, target their engine nacelles," Yoon ordered over the communication. War Marshal Krextar's retreat order echoed through the hegemony fleet, but Admiral Park was not finished demonstrating human capabilities. As the alien ships began their withdrawal, she made a decision that would shock the galaxy even more than the battle itself. "All stations prepare for Phase 2 operations," Admiral Park announced. "Dr. Kim, activate the construction protocols." Dr. Kim's fingers moved across his control panel, activating systems that had never been used in combat before. Deep within the Indomitable's hull, massive manufacturing bays came online. Automated systems began processing raw materials that the ship had collected during its rise from Earth's ocean floor. "Construction bays active," Dr. Kim reported. "Estimated time to first unit completion, 45 minutes. Lieutenant Commander Choi looked up from her tactical station in confusion. "Admiral, what are we constructing?" Admiral Park smiled grimly. "Reinforcements." The Indomitable was more than just a warship. It was a mobile factory, capable of building additional vessels using materials harvested from asteroids and space debris. While the hegemony fleet watched from the edge of the solar system, the human ship began constructing escort vessels in real time. Commander Yoon led his fighters in pursuit of the retreating aliens, but his orders were specific: observe and harass but do not destroy. Admiral Park wanted the hegemony to see what humanity could do, not just in battle, but in the aftermath of victory. "Ghost Squadron report," Yoon called over the radio. "We're tracking the alien flagship, sir," came the reply. "They've stopped their retreat at the orbit of Neptune. Looks like they're trying to regroup. Maintain observation distance. Do not engage unless they move back toward Earth." On the hegemony flagship, War Marshal Krextar was dealing with a situation he had never encountered in 3 centuries of military service, total tactical defeat. His senior officers stood around the bridge's holographic display, studying the impossible readings from their sensors. "The human vessel is building ships?" asked his intelligence officer, staring at the data in disbelief. "That appears to be correct, sir," replied the chief science officer. "Our sensors detect massive industrial activity within their hull. They appear to be constructing smaller vessels using some form of automated manufacturing system." Krextar studied the tactical display, trying to understand what he was seeing. The human ship had stopped its pursuit and was now stationary in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Mining drones were swarming around nearby asteroids, harvesting raw materials that were being transported back to the massive vessel. "How many ships can they build?" Krextar asked. "Unknown, sir. Based on the rate of construction and the available raw materials in this system, potentially hundreds." The War Marshal felt something he had never experienced before: genuine fear. The hegemony's military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and superior numbers. But if the humans could build ships faster than they could be destroyed, then numbers became meaningless. "Send a message to the Imperial capital," Krextar ordered. "Priority 1 transmission. The Emperor must know what we're facing here." Chief Petty Officer Han So-ra monitored the construction process from her weapons station. The Indomitable's manufacturing systems were building frigates and destroyers, smaller vessels designed to support the massive carrier in extended operations. Each new ship was equipped with the same advanced armor and kinetic weapons that made human vessels so effective against energy-based attacks. First frigate hull complete, she reported. Weapons installation beginning now. Time to full operational status? Admiral Park asked. 30 minutes for full combat readiness, Admiral. The automated systems are working faster than our most optimistic projections. Major Bay returned from his boarding operation with valuable intelligence. His Marines had successfully captured the Hegemony destroyer and taken its crew prisoner. The alien ship was now under human control, its computer systems being analyzed by Earth's best cryptographers. The aliens have never encountered our type of technology, Bay reported to Admiral Park. Their prisoners keep asking how we can build ships without exotic matter or antimatter reactors. They don't understand that we use different scientific principles entirely. Admiral Park nodded. Humanity had developed along a different technological path than most galactic species. While aliens focused on manipulating energy and exotic matter, humans had perfected materials science and precision manufacturing. The result was technology that seemed primitive to alien observers, but was actually far more efficient and practical. What, did you learn about their military structure? Admiral Park asked. The Hegemony military is built around the concept of overwhelming force, Bay replied. They've never faced an enemy that could match their firepower or outmaneuver their ships. Their entire tactical doctrine assumes that bigger and more heavily armed always wins. And now they've met an enemy that doesn't follow their rules, Admiral Park said with satisfaction. Dr. Kim approached the Admiral with a data pad containing construction reports. The first frigate will be ready for launch in 10 minutes. The manufacturing systems are exceeding all design specifications. We could potentially build an entire fleet in a matter of days. Admiral Park studied the reports, impressed by the efficiency of the automated systems. Humanity had spent 50 years developing this technology in secret, creating manufacturing capabilities that could outproduce entire planetary industrial complexes. Begin construction of additional units, she ordered. I want a full escort, fleet operational within 12 hours. The first human-built frigate launched from the Indomitable's construction bay, its hull gleaming with the same advanced armor that protected the carrier. The ship was 300 meters long, small compared to Hegemony vessels but faster and more heavily armed than anything else in its size class. Commander Yoon watched the launch from his fighter cockpit, amazed by what he was seeing. Control, this is Flight Leader Yoon. The new frigate is beautiful. How many more are we building? As many as we need, came Lieutenant Commander Choi's reply from the Indomitable's bridge. The Admiral wants to make sure our message is clearly understood. On the Hegemony flagship, the communications officer received an urgent transmission from the Imperial capital. Emperor Vexthul's image appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features twisted with rage. War Marshal Krekstar explained to me how a single primitive vessel has destroyed half of your fleet, the Emperor demanded. Krekstar straightened his shoulders, knowing that his military career was probably over. My lord, the humans possess technology that our scientists cannot explain. Their weapons ignore our shields, their armor absorbs our weapons, and they can construct new ships in a matter of hours. Impossible. No species in the galaxy has such capabilities. With respect, my lord, you are wrong. The humans do have such capabilities, and they have just demonstrated them against the finest fleet in the Hegemony military. Emperor Vexthul was silent for several moments, processing this information. The Hegemony had conquered hundreds of worlds through military superiority. If there was a species that could challenge that superiority, it threatened the very foundation of the Empire. Withdraw your remaining forces, the Emperor ordered finally. Return to the capital immediately. We must reassess our approach to these humans. But Admiral Park had other plans. As the Hegemony fleet prepared to leave the solar system, she opened communications with their flagship. War Marshal Krekstar, this is Admiral Park. Before you leave our space, I have something to show you. The human fleet had grown during the past few hours. The Indomitable was now escorted by 6 frigates and 3 destroyers, all built from asteroid materials using the carrier's advanced manufacturing systems. But that was only the beginning of the demonstration. Dr. Kim, activate the Deep Space Construction Protocol. Admiral Park ordered. Yes, Admiral. Deploying construction platforms now. The Indomitable launched a dozen large pods that spread out across the asteroid belt. Each pod was a self-contained manufacturing facility, capable of building ships independently of the carrier. Within minutes, the pods had attached themselves to large asteroids and begun converting the raw materials into additional vessels. Krextar watched in horror as his sensors detected dozens of new construction sites throughout the human solar system. They're building an entire fleet, he whispered. How is this possible? His science officer was frantically analyzing the sensor data. Sir, each construction platform appears to be fully automated. They can operate without any crew or external support. If they maintain this rate of construction, how long before they have a fleet larger than ours? At current construction rates, 72 hours, sir. Krextar closed his four eyes, trying to process the implications. The humans weren't just defending their world. They were building the foundation of a military force that could challenge the entire hegemony. Admiral Park broadcast her message to the retreating alien fleet, but she made sure it was transmitted on frequencies that would be intercepted by monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. People of the galactic hegemony, she began, her voice calm and professional. Today you have witnessed the power of human technology and determination. We did not seek this conflict, but we will not submit to conquest or slavery. The message was being The news spread across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. Within hours of the hegemony fleet's retreat from Earth, every major civilization knew that the impossible had happened. A single human ship had defeated 800 of the Empire's finest warships. Ambassador Lim Jae-wook stood before the Galactic Council on the neutral station of Nexus Prime. He was 55 years old, with silver hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had spent decades in diplomatic service. Today he carried the most important message in human history. Honored delegates, Ambassador Lim began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber where representatives of 47 species gathered to debate galactic affairs. I come before you today not as a conquered subject seeking mercy, but as the representative of a free and sovereign humanity. The chamber erupted in startled conversations. The Galactic Council had been preparing to discuss the terms of Earth's incorporation into the hegemony. No one had expected to hear from an independent human government. The hegemony representative, a tall, thin creature with multiple arms, rose from his seat. This is outrageous. The humans have no standing in this council. They are a primitive species that has just been brought into the Empire. Ambassador Lim smiled politely. Perhaps you have not received the latest reports from your military. Allow me to share some recent developments. The main display screen activated, showing recordings from the Battle of Solar Supremacy. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as the massive human supercarrier emerged from Earth's ocean and systematically destroyed the hegemony fleet. Dr. Song Yoon-ji sat in the Earth Defense Command Center, monitoring the broadcast of the council session. She was 42 years old, a xenobiologist who had spent her career studying alien species and their cultures. Today she was providing real-time analysis of the galactic community's reaction to humanity's revelations. The delegate from the Arcturus Republic just dropped his water container, Dr. Song reported to her colleagues. The Zephyrian representative appears to be hyperventilating. I think our message is getting through. On the display, Ambassador Lim continued his presentation. As you can see, humanity possesses defensive capabilities that were previously unknown to the galactic community. But we did not develop these capabilities for conquest, we built them to ensure our freedom. The recordings continued, showing the Indomitable's construction systems building new ships from asteroid materials. The alien delegates had never seen anything like it. Most galactic civilizations required massive shipyards and months of construction time to build a single vessel. The humans were building entire fleets in a matter of hours. General Nam Won-sik watched the proceedings from his command post on Luna. He was 48 years old, a strategic planner who had helped design humanity's long-term defense strategy. Today marked the culmination of 50 years of careful preparation. Phase 4 is proceeding on schedule, General Nam reported to Admiral Park, who was still aboard the Indomitable in Earth orbit. Our deep space scouts have reached 12 systems, and are beginning diplomatic contact with local governments. Resistance? Admiral Park asked. None so far. Everyone wants to talk. The smaller species see us as potential protectors against hegemony expansion. Even some of the major powers are expressing interest in technological exchange. Back on Nexus, Prime Ambassador Lim was fielding questions from the increasingly agitated council delegates. How long have you possessed this technology? Asked the representative from the Centauri Federation. Humanity has been developing our defensive capabilities for over 50 years. Lim replied honestly. We have been aware of galactic civilization for much longer than you knew about us. You were spying on us? Demanded the hegemony representative. We were monitoring public communications and learning about our neighbors, Lim corrected, just as any prudent species would do when they discover they are not alone in the universe. The truth was even more impressive than Ambassador Lim was revealing. Earth's intelligence services had been intercepting and analyzing alien communications for decades. Humanity knew the location of every major hegemony military base, the composition of their fleets, and the weaknesses in their technology. Dr. Song's analysis continued as she watched the alien reactions. The hegemony representative is showing signs of extreme stress. His species exhibits involuntary color changes when agitated, and he's cycling through the entire spectrum right now. What about the others? Asked her supervisor. Mixed reactions. Fear, curiosity, excitement. The smaller species see opportunity, the larger ones see threat. Pretty much what we expected. Admiral Park was dealing with her own diplomatic challenges. The Indomitable was receiving dozens of communication requests from alien governments, trade organizations, and scientific institutions. Everyone wanted to know more about human technology and capabilities. Admiral, the Andromedans are requesting detailed specifications for our manufacturing systems, reported Lieutenant Commander Choi. They're offering to trade rare elements in exchange for construction platforms. Politely decline for now, Admiral Park replied. We're not ready to share our most sensitive technology, but let them know we're open to discussing mutual defense agreements. The strategic situation was evolving rapidly. Intelligence reports indicated that the hegemony was facing internal rebellions as client species realized that the empire was not as powerful as they had believed. 3 major sectors had already declared independence, and more were considering similar actions. Captain Lee Dongwoo coordinated the defense of Earth's home system from his command center. The planet was no longer the isolated world it had been a few days ago. Alien ships were arriving hourly, requesting permission to enter the system for diplomatic purposes. Sir, we have 17 alien vessels holding position at the system boundary, reported Lieutenant Park. All claim to have peaceful intentions, but some of them are armed. Any hegemony vessels? Lee asked. No, sir. Word has apparently spread that approaching Earth without permission is inadvisable. Lee allowed himself a small smile. The battle of solar supremacy had certainly sent a clear message to the galaxy. Dr. Kim was busy analyzing data from the captured hegemony ships. The alien technology was impressive in its own way, but it was based on fundamentally different principles than human science. Where aliens used exotic matter and energy manipulation, humans had focused on conventional physics and precision engineering. Their power systems are incredibly inefficient, Dr. Kim reported to his research team. They're using antimatter reactors to power systems that we can run on simple fusion. It's like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. What about their weapons? Asked one of his assistants. Powerful but limited. They can destroy anything that relies on energy shielding, but they're useless against solid matter moving at high speed. They've never encountered kinetic weapons because most species consider them primitive. The research was revealing a crucial truth. The galactic community had followed a single path of technological development for so long that they had forgotten there might be other approaches. Humanity's different evolutionary path had led to solutions that seemed impossible to alien observers. Ambassador Lim continued his presentation to the Galactic Council, revealing more details about human capabilities. The aliens were learning that Earth had not just built one supercarrier, but had the industrial capacity to build dozens more. Humanity offers the galaxy a new paradigm, Lim explained. Instead of conquest and subjugation, we propose cooperation and mutual benefit. Our technology can improve life for all species, but only through peaceful collaboration. The hegemony representative was becoming increasingly desperate. You cannot simply ignore thousands of years of galactic law. The hegemony has legitimate claims to that system. Based on what authority? Lim asked calmly. The authority of superior force? We have just demonstrated that your force is not superior to ours. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For millennia, galactic civilization had been based on the principle that might makes right. The strongest species ruled, while the weaker ones submitted or were destroyed. Humanity was challenging that entire system. Dr. Song watched as alien delegates began to realize what was happening. They're starting to understand that everything has changed, she reported. The old balance of power is gone. Major Bay's intelligence teams were discovering just how extensive the changes would be. The captured hegemony officers were providing detailed information about the Empire's internal structure, and the picture that emerged was of a civilization in crisis. The hegemony is more fragile than anyone realized, Bay reported to Admiral Park. They rule through fear and intimidation, but their actual military is spread thin across hundreds of systems. Our victory has exposed their weakness. How many rebellions? Admiral Park asked. At least 12 major uprisings, with more, starting every day. The Emperor is losing control of his own empire. On the Imperial capital world, Emperor Vexthul faced the worst crisis in hegemony history. His advisors brought reports of one disaster after another as the Empire began to collapse from within. The Rigel sector has declared independence, announced his intelligence chief. The Vegan colonies are in open revolt. 3 of our major fleet bases have been. 6 months after the Battle of Solar Supremacy, the galaxy was a transformed place. Captain Li Dongwu stood on the observation deck of the UES Indomitable as it approached the former hegemony capital world of Vexthara Prime. The massive planet hung in space before them, its cities no longer glowing with the harsh light of imperial power, but with the softer illumination of a world learning to be free. It's hard to believe how much has changed, said Dr. Song Yunji, joining Li at the viewport. She had become Earth's chief xenological advisor, helping to coordinate the cultural exchanges that were transforming interstellar civilization. Li nodded, watching as human and alien ships moved in peaceful formation around the planet. 6 months ago we were hiding in our own solar system, hoping the hegemony wouldn't notice us. Now we're here to help them establish their first democratic government. The transformation had been remarkable. The galactic hegemony had collapsed completely within weeks of their defeat at Earth. Without the myth of invincibility to hold the Empire together, client species had rebelled on hundreds of worlds. Some had chosen independence, while others had requested membership in the growing Terran Cooperative Alliance. Admiral Park Hye-jin was no longer just the commander of a single ship. She now oversaw the Terra Protection Fleet, which included 12 additional supercarriers and hundreds of escort vessels. But her real power came from her role as humanity's chief military diplomat, negotiating defense agreements that protected smaller species from aggressive neighbors. Admiral, we're receiving clearance to enter orbit, reported Commander Yoon Seok-jin from the bridge. He had been promoted to serve as the Indomitable's executive officer, bringing his combat experience to the ship's expanding diplomatic missions. Take us in, Commander, Admiral Park replied. Let's see how our former enemies are adjusting to freedom. The planet below had been the center of an empire that controlled thousands of worlds. Now it was struggling to feed its own population, without the tribute that had once flowed in from conquered territories. Humanitarian aid from Earth and its allies was helping, but the transition was difficult. Dr. Kim Tae-hyun had established research stations on 43 worlds, sharing human technology with species that had been suppressed under hegemony rule. His teams were teaching alien scientists new approaches to manufacturing, energy production, and space travel. The results were revolutionary. The Andromedan Republic has successfully constructed their first kinetic weapons facility, Dr. Kim reported to Admiral Park via secure communication. They're producing railguns based on our designs but adapted for their larger ships. Any problems with the technology transfer? Admiral Park asked. None so far. The Andromedans are natural engineers. They've actually improved on some of our original designs. This was exactly what humanity had hoped for. Instead of hoarding their technological advantages, Earth was sharing them with allies who could contribute their own innovations. The result was an explosion of scientific progress across the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Choi Mi-young coordinated the Indomitable's busy schedule from her position as operations officer. The ship was no longer just a warship, but a mobile embassy, research station, and humanitarian aid platform. Every day brought new requests for assistance from worlds struggling with the aftermath of the hegemony's collapse. Admiral, the Rigel Coalition is requesting medical assistance for a plague outbreak on their agricultural worlds, Choi reported. The disease appears to be a biological weapon left behind by hegemony forces. Deploy medical teams immediately, Admiral Park ordered, and contact Dr. Song's cultural department. We need to understand why the hegemony would poison farmland during their retreat. The investigation would reveal one of the darker aspects of the former empire's final days. As their control collapsed, some hegemony commanders had chosen to leave poisoned gifts for the species that had dared to rebel. It was a vindictive gesture that demonstrated why the empire had needed to fall. Ambassador Lim Jae-wook was busier than ever, managing diplomatic relations with over 200 species. The Terran Cooperative Alliance had grown from Earth's original proposal into a galactic organization that included most of the former hegemony's territory. But growth brought challenges. The problem is that some species want protection without contributing to the common defense, Ambassador Lim explained to the Alliance Council during a secure conference call. They want all the benefits of membership with none of the responsibilities. What do you recommend? Asked the Andromedan. Representative. A tiered membership system. Full members contribute military forces or resources to mutual defense. Associate members receive trade benefits and diplomatic protection, but limited military support. The proposal was approved unanimously. The alliance needed to be fair, but firm in its requirements. Freedom was not free, and every member species needed to contribute to maintaining it. Major Bae Kyung-ho had become the alliance's specialist in post-conflict reconstruction. His Marines were no longer just boarding enemy ships. They were helping former hegemony worlds transition to self-government. It was challenging work that required both military skills and diplomatic sensitivity. The situation on Kethmaran is stabilizing, Bae reported from his command ship. The local population has elected a provisional government and they're requesting membership in the alliance. Any resistance from former hegemony loyalists? Admiral Park asked. Some, but nothing. We can't handle. The locals are doing most of the work themselves. They just needed someone to show them that the hegemony couldn't come back. This was happening across the galaxy. Species that had been conquered generations ago were rediscovering their own cultures and traditions. Human anthropologists were working with alien historians to reconstruct the rich civilizations that the hegemony had tried to erase. Chief Petty Officer Han So-ra had been promoted to oversee the production of the new generation of Alliance vessels. The shipyards that humanity had established throughout their territory were now building ships for dozens of different species, each design adapted to the specific needs and capabilities of its users. The Centauri Federation's first heavy cruiser is ready for launch, Han reported from the orbital shipyard above New Centauri. They've requested that Admiral Park attend the commissioning ceremony. Schedule it, Admiral Park replied. These ceremonies are important for Alliance morale. The sight of former enemies working together to build a common defense was powerful. Propaganda for the Alliance's values. Every ship launch, every joint exercise, every successful diplomatic mission demonstrated that cooperation was stronger than conquest. General Nam Won-sik was coordinating the Alliance's response to the few remaining aggressive powers in the galaxy. Not everyone had accepted the new order peacefully. Some species had chosen to continue the hegemony's aggressive policies, attacking weaker neighbors in hopes of building their own empires. The Valdorian Empire is massing ships near the Sirius sector, General Nam reported during the weekly strategic briefing. Intelligence suggests they're planning an invasion of the Centauri colonies. Alliance response? Admiral Park asked. The Centauri Federation has requested assistance under Article 5 of the Mutual Defense Treaty. I recommend deploying the Third Fleet to the sector. Approved. Make it clear to the Valdorians that aggression against Alliance members will not be tolerated. The Third Fleet's arrival in the Sirius sector was swift and decisive. The Valdorian Empire found themselves facing not just Centauri defenders, but a combined force of human Andromedan and Rigelian ships. The would-be invaders withdrew without firing a shot, another demonstration that the Alliance's collective defense was real and effective. Dr. Song continued her work studying the cultural changes sweeping the galaxy. The fall of the hegemony had unleashed a renaissance of art, literature, and scientific inquiry among species that had been suppressed for generations. The Aquarians have rediscovered their traditional music, Dr. Song reported. They're composing symphonies that incorporate mathematical concepts from human science. The results are extraordinary. And the former hegemony species? Admiral Park asked. Mixed reactions. The younger generation is embracing the new freedoms, but some of the older citizens are struggling with the loss of their imperial identity. We're working with their psychologists to develop support programs. This was one of the most challenging aspects of the galactic transformation. The species that had ruled the hegemony were now just another member of the galactic community. Some adapted well to the change, while others struggled with the loss of their privileged status. Commander Yoon was leading a joint training exercise with pilots from 12 different species when he received an urgent communication from Alliance Command. A distress signal had been detected from an unexplored region of the galaxy, and the source appeared to be a previously unknown species. All flights return to base, Yoon ordered. We have a possible first contact situation. The Indomitable altered course toward the signal, accompanied by a diverse fleet of Alliance vessels. If this was indeed a new species, it would be the first major discovery since the Alliance's formation. The approach would test all of humanity's diplomatic and scientific protocols. As they approached the source of the signal, the fleet's sensors